I'm not going to do it. Hey, welcome to the Academy 99 podcast. Welcome. I'm Brad Grinnen. This is Chris Lee.
What's
and we talk to each other. I wish you lived closer.
I know, right? That would be, way more fun.
Well, we could do for podcast sake. I wish you were closer, because then we could just record in studio together.
Yeah.
It's way better. I hardly watch a podcast or even an interview anymore when someone's Skyped in or Zoomed in. It's just, my brain clicks off. So anyways, now that I'm done telling people to skip this episode and every other episode we've done, what's going on, Chris?
Dude, just chilling, recovering from the retreat last weekend. You remember when we were youth
when
pastors.
We went to that retreat a few days ago?
Maybe it's just because I'm older, but it just takes a minute to recover from traveling and pouring into an event, you know?
It does. When I was running camps, like week-long camps with 200 plus, and retreats with 100 plus, even smaller retreats, you're just so exhausted. It's not a bad exhaustive. It's just like I was done because you're just pouring everything into the people that you're running the retreat for.
Exactly.
You know, because you care. I didn't do those things for fun. Being in charge isn't fun of something like that, especially when it's students, because I immediately take full responsibility as their guardian. Like, anybody dies, that's on me. Anyone gets pregnant, that's on me. You know what I mean? Like, whatever kids get into, it's just like, and particularly the kids that I was specifically responsible for, these guys were jumping off of roofs and like doing the craziest stuff. Like, don't go here because the alligators. You guarantee you they've got whole chickens frozen trying to catch alligators. You know what I mean?
Accurate. Yeah.
So, talking about you, Ben Jackson.
Robert Wineland.
Poor Robert, man. That kid must have thought I hated him. His very first trip, he wasn't even in the youth group. His mom was a volunteer, and he came with, and I was constantly like, we went to the Grand Canyon. Robert, get away from the ledge. Roberts, get away from the ledge. Right? I know because Betsy told me, she was like, he asked me if you don't like him. I was like, do you want him to survive? She's like, yeah. And I was like, well, this is one of those times I'd rather somebody not die than like me. There are very few of them, especially back then, because I was such a people pleaser and I wanted to be liked so bad. But anyways, man, hanging out at the retreat was one of the things where I was like, man, we should just live closer.
Yeah.
So until then, maybe as we visit each other, pause for internet connectivity.
But you hit it on the head, man. Like, you and I connect pretty regularly, either through this or phone calls or playing video games or whatever. But just hanging out all weekend was good, you know?
Yeah, it's not the same. There is no substitute for physical proximity with other human beings. There just isn't. There is. This is a substitute, talking to each other, talking on the phone, whatever, Zoom meetings. But it doesn't substitute for the substantive interaction and exchange that happens in person, and being able to, you're in physical proximity with people. You've seen it. You've experienced it before. Yeah, I'm sure you've experienced it more like downrange, in terms of you come into an area and you feel the other people in the room or in the area. Yeah. You could just feel them because they're physically there and they have energy. And I don't mean that in any kind of woo-woo kind of way. Sort of like when my daughters sneak up on me and I'm like, someone is 3 feet behind me staring at me right now trying to scare me. And you just know it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was part of the intent behind doing an in-person live event, and not doing a Zoom event. Zoom events are great because you can get a ton of people from all over, but part of the intent, like you said, was that close proximity to other human beings, which was important.
Yeah. Just comparing, because we just got back from doing the retreat. We'll talk a little bit about the format here in a second, but I would never want to do what we just did on a Zoom event. Like Zoom events, you come back from that retreat, I'm like, yeah, Zoom events suck. Do another webinar. You know, I mean, it's just like, shut up. I haven't done a webinar in forever, by the way. But I don't know if I'll ever do one. I really don't. Yeah. In person's just so much better. And people who, I mean, I know this. My clients know this. You know, my clients are on Zoom calls all over the world, but they still fly to Hong Kong. They still go to Dubai. You know, they still go to DC or Wall Street, like in person physically. And if I do a workshop, it's in person. It's not over a video conference. But yeah, so we went to Sedona, rented a 2-house Airbnb connected with like a gym corridor, you know, and pool and hot tub, which no one ever ended up using. Barbecue pits, which we used for sure. Outdoor fire sitting area. Tiki bar, which I never even walked up onto that deck. I don't even know it was up there. Probably a couple stools and a table or whatever. And pink flamingo floating in the pool. But so it was pretty intimate, and 3 coaches, and just, man, we just dove in and did some sessions, and it was a game changer for people. I mean, every single person said that was life-changing. Not to toot our own horns, just it's a reality. But how can you? I mean, with the preparation and the intention that we put into it, and the content, which we can talk about too. But I'm curious, what's the thing that, like, when you walk away from that retreat, what's the one overall thing other than being in person that really just kind of stuck out to you?
There's no escaping. And what I mean by that is you had the capability to, like, really press into people's, like, resistance and challenge them on maybe some fixed mindset stuff. Yeah. And they couldn't turn off their video, and they couldn't, like, get up and walk away.
Or like, oh, time's up, I got to go to my next meeting. Like, they're dedicated for the weekend.
Exactly. And there was there was no real time set, you know. What I kept repeating was we trained to standard, not to time, right? And so however long it took to go through our material and then also walk people through various processes, that's just how long it took. And there was something about voluntarily showing up to a place, intentionally being vulnerable, and not allowing yourself the opportunity to escape. It's like burning your boats, right? In some respect, it's like you show up and it's like, nope, this is what we're doing. And
I'm here. I spent this money. I took the time off to get here.
Right.
I'm doing it. And you can see that on people's faces at different times as we were walking through some coaching exercises. You could see it was like, okay, I guess I'm going to face this thing that I haven't wanted to face for a while, or didn't even know that I didn't want to face for a while. That's interesting. For me, I think the number one thing for me personally was how much I got out of it. Surprised me, you know, getting to hang out with you, you know, was like, oh yeah, that's right. We're friends for a reason. Right. But just doing the retreat, getting there, being in person, coaching with people in person. Most of my coaching is over phone or over video, and has been for 12 years now. Right. But I mean, I've done in person. I do in person still.
Yeah.
I've done other retreats. But there was something about it. I think the biggest thing was I hadn't traveled since I was going to go visit my buddy Mike. You know about Mike, in LA in April of 2020 is when my ticket was, like April 22nd, and the country shut down like a week before.
Right.
That. And so it wasn't like, at first for a couple of days, it was like, well, should I fly or shouldn't I fly out there? I would have flown, but it was like, I'm staying at somebody else's house. Right. California was really tight.
Yeah.
And then airline shut down.
Yeah.
And I was like, I guess I'm not going for sure. And I hadn't had to go anywhere since.
Yeah.
I mean, I drove to Pennsylvania to bury my dad's ashes in the lot that he has with his family. But that was it. It's the only place I've gone to, and whatever. It's like I went to my hometown. Right. So I hadn't gotten on a flight. I hadn't been surrounded by thousands of strangers. It doesn't scare me. I just didn't think about it. Right. And all of a sudden I was just like, oh my God, I forgot that I really like being around a lot of people. And I was like, I also, for sure, I'm an introvert, which no one ever believes me, but it's just like, for sure, I'm an introvert. And then being at the retreat and just, we're here, we're with these people. There's stuff to work through and there's no hiding. Right. I love being on the spot. I love being on the spot. You're doing it, and it's you're either gonna fly or somewhere in between that, crash and burn. Right. Right. And there's a chance you're just like, I guess I can't help you find your purpose. I guess I can't help you get a vision of your future. Yeah. And to me, those aren't options. I love when there aren't options. So I don't know. That's what for me, it was like, selfishly, I'm so glad we did it for me.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It was definitely a learning experience. It was coaching for sure, which, you and I both do all the time, but even just from like a logistical standpoint, being able to set that up and plan out and learning lessons as a result of all the logistics behind it was great. Plus I kind of agree with you. I like being presented with a mission and essentially saying, like, you have to do this. You have to come through, So.
I don't know what sense it makes to, which is better, talk about the sessions you did or talk about the sessions I did first.
Yeah. I like the way we set it up. So for both the days you went first and then I went after. And I thought that setup made sense because like in your first session, you talked about, purpose and then walk through exercises to achieve that. And then my sessions were, all right, now you got your purpose. Let's dial in identity and long-term goals.
Yeah. Yeah. So, 30,000 foot view is, this retreat was about removing limitations. It was called Limitless.
Right.
And it amazes me the amount of success people can have without having clearly, like, written down, memorized their purpose in life. What are they here for? Why are they? What's unique about them? When you talk about purpose, I mean, 10 years ago, it was a big buzzword. So much so that Elizabeth Gilbert wrote a book and was like, screw finding your purpose. I think she's wrong, but I mean, she's not dumb.
Right.
At all. I don't know her.
Yeah.
but I hear really good things about her from friends who know her.
Mm-hmm.
But that seemed more like a let the air out of the bag because people were really getting stressed out. I got to find my purpose. So it's not impossible. It's not even difficult.
Right.
If you know what you're doing, it's really, you saw how simple it was, right?
Yeah.
But there is a method to absolutely finding your purpose, and so you can write it down so you know it. Now, over time, it will hone in. In seasons, it will adapt and it will shift a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we adapt and we shift a little bit. But finding your purpose and being able to then create an identity or uncover your identity and then cast a vision for your future off of that, and then strategically walk through how you're going to create a checklist down to day-to-day habits that you need to build to live into that identity.
Right.
If you don't do that, no matter how much success you have, you are capped. You have created a ceiling for yourself. There's a lid on your game.
Yeah.
And to your point, it was my point actually. It blows my mind how many people I've worked with who have had more than a modicum of success, like really successful CEOs and athletes who, any C-suite, who have achieved incredible things that other people would look at and be like, this person's got it made. But they're a high performer. They're an elite performer.
Right.
So I had this conversation yesterday with a client. They're bummed by gold standard how their company is doing. That this is the founder of the company, so it's a little different, but still CEO. By how their company is doing, they're the gold standard. They compare themselves to other people, which they should. They're comparing themselves to probably 0.0001% of the world population.
Right.
Who are doing unimaginably well. You know, these people also kind of like hit the lottery in terms of IQ. Really. And that makes a difference.
It
does. That's not a limiting belief. That makes a difference. Now I know a lot of people with good IQs who can't, fight their way out of a wet bag or have a conversation. That's fine.
Right.
But that 0.001% that's doing really well, they were gifted with stuff I don't have going on up here. That's totally fine. So they're the gold standard. And just, having them confirm and make that shift that, I've had a lot of success. That, $1 million a year in revenue is pretty good for a company. It's only been around for 3 years. And what they're really feeling, it's not just the comparison. The major factor is they're a high achiever. So it's just like, but I know what the possibility is. I know what the potential is. Why can't I get there? What's been holding me back from getting to the next level?
Right.
If you don't know what your purpose is, if you don't get that identity honed in, if you don't determine what your future is going to look like, which part of that means, what do you want? And then you don't strategize, what are you going to do? You're done.
Exactly.
You're not going to, you're limiting yourself. So that's a fat, long intro. It's like a dune worm intro, but I can jump into my first session, but I'm going to pause right there for reflection.
No, I think you touched on something. Yes, success is definitely possible through brute force. Like you can kind of muscle your way there just through like
I call it white knuckling.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like just steamrolling through and powering into success. That's definitely a possibility. And as you mentioned, a lot of the folks that you work with, that's what they've done. I think the beauty behind like your process in particular is it helps streamline that process so it's not so white knuckly or steamroller.
A little bit of flow
it's like,
in there.
Yeah.
Or a lot of flow in there. Yeah.
Right. So the folks that haven't gone through like your process and discovered true purpose, and they're missing out because it makes everything clear. I'll use a quick land navigation analogy.
Yeah, bring it.
So during selection, like you're given a point on a map and you're told, go find it. And sometimes you luck out and it's just open fields and you just bebopping along and you're able to just cruise. And then you come across a giant draw, which is a low point in the geography that then has a bunch of vegetation that's trying to prevent you from your point. And 100%, you can just power through those things. It's exhausting and painful, but oftentimes you get out the other side and you're okay. Your process is like bypassing the draw altogether or finding a clearer route. You can still get to the end point, but it's just way easier and it's less painful, you know.
White knuckling isn't sustainable long term for the majority of the population.
Right.
It just it's basically like I'm fighting the world all the time as opposed to going, you know, being in the flow, you know.
Mm-hmm.
White knuckling is like going surfing, but you spend all of your time paddling through the break as opposed to catching a wave.
Right.
You know,
right. Yeah.
which is exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the first time I went surfing, I just thought when I was done, I was just laying on the beach. Like it was like a scene out of a movie. You know, my lower body was still, you know, the tide was still lapping up onto me, but I was just like, I can't move and I'm going to die. Like I'm about to go. Is that cardiac arrest? No. Is this cardiac arrest? No. I mean, I just thought I was going to die. I was exhausted just from paddling through the break, you know?
Right.
It's so, yeah. But walking through the thing about when you find your purpose, what's so powerful about it is once you do, you've got several things now. You've got the foundation to begin to form the identity you want, you know, who you want to become. You have
mm-hmm.
a really good idea of who you are. But when you know your purpose, anything now that doesn't line up with what you're here for, you just don't participate in.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And so I went through this process last week when we got back from the retreat with a client over Zoom. And the biggest relief for her immediately was there was all these things that she had already said yes to. She was like, I need to have more courage to say no. And I get that. And that's part of it. You got to exercise that muscle. But if you don't have your yes, it's hard to know what to say no to. If you don't have your yes, you don't have a reason to say no to other things. But when you have your purpose, you immediately realize what's important, what isn't, what feeds into what you want in your future, what doesn't. And it becomes really clear. I'm going to say no to these things. I'm going to quit sitting on these boards. I don't need to volunteer my time there. I want to volunteer my time over here, whatever it is. So that first session was just walking someone through this exercise I do, where they're recalling their happiest memories and then in great detail. And I'll walk them through that. I'm not going to go through all that right now. And that gives us some massive clues as to what are their major drivers in life. How do they want to feel? And what makes them feel happy and fulfilled?
Right.
And when you know those things, you can build a really clear purpose. And everyone I've ever done this with, at the end, I take a few minutes and I just kind of write out, you know, I'm going to give you the basis for what I think your purpose is based on everything you've just told me.
Right.
And from there, you hone that in. And then over the weekend, I was able to talk one-on-one with people and help them hone it in. But I just saw Simon Sinek just did something similar, way shorter, not as clear, but on a podcast, he was talking with two guys about why they ended up in the career they're in and asked them some questions about when they were younger and came up with a purpose for them. And then it's powerful because it's almost like a lot of weight is lifted. Like now I know all these other expectations that I've had put on me from other people, I don't have to carry those around anymore. And I know what I want to focus on.
Right.
And most people see purpose as like career.
Right.
I look at it more like a wagon wheel, and the purpose is that hub and all of the spokes coming off of it: career, marriage, kids, friends, hobbies, impact. Those are all parts of your purpose. So you should be living out your purpose in every area of your life.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can really hone that in just knowing what your purpose is. I can tell now if someone's in the room and they know what their purpose is, as opposed to someone who doesn't, but is really smart, has a lot of energy, very charismatic, very impactful, but almost like a balloon that someone let go of and it's not tied. It's just
right. Yep.
It's not bad, but it's not focused.
No, I think it's super valuable, and I think you're right. The discovering purpose or taking the time to develop appropriately your purpose, it will then have effects on. It should have effects on every other area of life, and now you're not the balloon that's bouncing all over the room. You have clear direction and intentionality with all of your movements in all areas of life. Spot on.
That first afternoon then, so I did that first session and then you followed up. Did you talk about identity then?
Yeah.
Get into that.
Yeah, I think purpose and identity are pretty closely related. But the intent behind the exercise I did was to dial in exactly who you want to be in those spokes of the wheel. Like you help develop the hub in the middle. Now let's fine tune each of those spokes.
That's a good analogy.
And for me, one of my clients pointed out that I wasn't super concerned with her past. Like I didn't really care about all the patterns. I didn't care about all the patterns that may have led her up to where she was in life, because like there's nothing you can do about the past. I'm very concerned with, all right, where do you want to go? Who do you want to be? And let's dial that in, because that will change behavior, which will change patterns, which will adjust trajectory of life, right? And so kind of your session was awesome because it perfectly lines up with kind of my philosophy too. And okay, in the emotional area of life or the social area of life, how you interact with other people, or the financial, which could include career or other things, or the mental, like how do you want to develop your mental acuity, physical, like what kind of shape do you want to be in, what kind of capabilities do you want to have physically, like all of those start with like, tell me what kind of person you want to be in each of those areas. The goals kind of sort themselves out if you're able to really develop your identity, because now it's not, and we've talked about this before, now the goal isn't this New Year's resolution that you're trying to keep up with. It's more like, no, I just behave differently because I'm evolving into a different person. And evolving into a different person is totally up to you. You can decide what kind of person you want to be. But it takes a minute to decide, So.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so difficult for people? Is that the question? Why do you think so few people actually can state what they want with detail?
Right. I think some of it comes from trying to balance expectations placed upon themselves with also what they want. And sometimes those two are different things. And particularly if you're listening to or paying a lot of attention to the expectations other people are putting on you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's expectations we're putting on ourselves. And even those can get in the way, I think, because
I 100%. It's sort of like the difference between what goes, if you could get a snapshot into, if you could hear someone's thoughts,
right?
Put a microphone on someone's head, and it's like, well, I'm going to say I want this because I should want this. What's that mean? You know what I mean? Like, why do they feel like they should want specific things?
Right. And that's why, and that's why I always start with the identity before we even talk about goals, because the identity will shape the goal itself. Maybe the expectation was that, oh, you're smart, you should go be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, or an engineer. And so that's kind of the direction you just start heading, even though in reality, you just want to be a woodworker and make really fine furniture or something like that,
Yeah.
So start with the identity, start with who do you want to be in all those areas of life. And I know I sound like a broken record, but it's so vital, because that is where the shift comes to then change behavior. Because goals are, it's hard to achieve a goal when you're just white knuckling it, like we talked about. It's possible, but it's exhausting. Whereas
if it's a goal worth achieving, anyways.
Exactly, yeah. And whereas if you begin with like, all right, what kind of man do I want to be? Well, I want to be somebody that soaks up knowledge and learns new skills because that's interesting. I want to be the kind of person that's in great shape and can outperform my grandkids when they start showing up.
Yeah.
That's different than I want to lose 30 pounds or I want to read 100 books, way different. So.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit, because that goes into my third session. Because there's a point here. Okay, yes, you determine who you want to be, what type of person you want to be, and you did that through I am statements. And it's not who you are now. But like for me, I love. Whatever the example is, I just liked your example, which I totally stole in terms of fitness and health, but mine's more like, I am someone who looks good naked and has energy and lengthens their life.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not there yet. So there's that acknowledgement, there's that gap, that you really get into in your fourth session. So I'll let you talk about that then. But there is a difference between where you're at and who you want to become. And it really is about leaning into, I am this future person. That's who I am.
Right.
So I do those things that future me would do. So when I walk people through the third, my second session, our combined third session, it would, I'm doing a very similar exercise mentally where it's a visioning exercise. So was the first one, but this one is way more about meeting yourself in the future based upon that version of you living every day, their best version of themselves, showing up, living into their purpose.
Yeah.
Habits built from those purposes, from that purpose. What have they accomplished? What are they doing? How are they living their life? And you see it and you feel it and you believe it. And it's the closest I can ever get somebody to actually believing that that's who they have already become in that exercise, in that moment. And so what that does is it strips all the expectations, your parents' expectations, your partner's expectation, your spouse's expectation, your children's expectations of who you should be, your faith community's expectations, your government's expectations, society's expectations. And it's just you having lived your life according to your purpose. Who does that person become? And you see it really clearly. And then oh, these are the things I want to do. This is who I want to become. I want to become that version of me. And when you become that version of you, when you can feel it in your body, it's just a game changer. It's totally different. And now you get really clear on what goals need to be set. And That's third session. I mean, it's really not more complicated than that. That's it in a nutshell. I don't even know if there's anything to pull apart there to explain.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head. It's that particular exercise that you did. I do something similar. Yours eventually leads to like the deathbed, envisioning you on your own deathbed and the life that you've lived up until that point. I do a similar one. I call it the rocking chair test. When you're at the twilight of your life and you're just chilling on your rocking chair on your front porch, drinking your sweet tea, who's around you? What kind of stories do you want to be able to tell? What kind of life experience do you want to be able to share with the people that you care most about, good or bad? Because a lot can be learned from, mistakes made as well, and so yeah, it's envisioning future self and figuring out what kind of behaviors need to take place in order to achieve that dream future self,
Yeah. And so talk about the thing that was really interesting to me that pushed me in your session was talk about having a goal and then forcing people to readjust their goals to make them bigger.
Yeah.
And then reverse engineering, backwards planning that.
Right. There's one guy who pushed back a little bit and I had to push back harder. But I asked him, okay, in the physical area of life, what do you want to be able to achieve? This is after we've established identity. Tell me who you want to be. Okay, that's settled and set in stone now. Tell me what you want to be able to achieve. And he used a golf analogy. I'm not super familiar with golf, and so I just had to take his word for it. He was like, I wanted to be able to achieve a certain handicap in golf. Okay, cool. And then I kind of looked around the room and I think it was actually you that was like, that's totally doable. So I went back to him. I was like, all right, man, I need you to reevaluate this and say, what's a goal that scares me? What's a goal that I don't know quite how I'm going to achieve it, but rather something that like I just want to achieve. Because those are two different things. Sometimes we get too wrapped around the axle of like, well, I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to do that. So I'm gonna hedge my bets and make sure that I pick something that's achievable. And I say, no, we'll figure out how in just a second. Tell me something that is big and scary that makes you uncomfortable and gives you a little bit of sense of urgency in your gut as you're writing it down. And he kept pushing. He was like, oh, but I don't know how I'm going to be able to do that. And I said, don't worry about that yet. What do you want to achieve? Well, I would really like this, but I have no idea how that's going to happen. Okay,
cool.
Now that you've told me what you actually want and not the safe bet, we established that. All right, that's 5 years from now. Okay, if in order to be on track for that big 5-year goal that you're scared of, what milestone needs to be hit in these next 12 months? And he wrote that out. And then I said, okay, what has to happen this first month? And then he wrote that out. Okay, this first week. And he wrote that out. And his eyes started to like brighten. And then I was like, all right, what do you got to do today to be on track for that 5-year goal? And once he backwards planned like that, he's like, oh, this is actually very achievable.
Right.
I just have to be consistent with the effort. I'm like, yes, that's why we start at the end first and then work backwards, because it makes the goal less scary. So aim big, shoot for something that is a little bit uncomfortable and makes you a little bit nervous about the how. And then we sort out the how, and then it's even less scary than you anticipated.
100%. That was good. It was powerful. It challenged me for my goals. I am statements in your second session, and then in your first session, our second session, and then the challenging goals. It's not rocket science. You can 100% get really clear on your purpose. Mm-hmm. You can then know what you want your identity to be. Then you can know what you want your future to look like and who you have to be for that future. And then you can adjust your goals accordingly and create the habits that you have to start today to move into that. It is how, consciously or not, it's how people do the things they do that make you go, holy crap.
Right.
They probably say holy shit, but keeping it PG.
That's okay. Filters off. There's a couple things there I kind of want to talk about. Is like, I have a couple of clients who have been trying to lose weight for a while, and they would do like a fad diet or a fad workout and then go back to old habits. And I'm a certified personal trainer through the National Academy of Sports Medicine, but two of my clients, like one guy, he's lost about 40 pounds since working with me. And the other one, she's gone down numerous dress sizes. Like she looks like a whole new person. But I never gave them a single workout plan or meal plan. They just changed their identity. They changed how they viewed themselves, which then adjusted behavior, So I guess my point behind that is like that identity shift, as you envision future self and what you want to achieve as that future self, it trickles back to those daily habits and actions.
100%, man.
The other thing I wanted to point out is so when I was in the Army serving as a Green Beret, like sometimes we would work with infantry guys and teach them CQB or close quarter battle, which is really just clearing houses and stuff like that. And sometimes they would ask, like, how do I become a Green Beret? Like, what's it take to become a Green Beret? And the answer is less sexy than they anticipated, because it's not all like the Gucci gear that we get, though. And that helps, but ultimately it's what we tell them is when we're working with these infantry guys, it's like there's a difference. The difference between like somebody at a high performing level like that and regular infantry guys is like, we become masters of the basics. The things that regular guys train on periodically, we master, and so it just looks different. It looks smoother. It looks like we can walk into a house and clear rooms without talking to each other. That's the level of mastery. But it's the basics. It's not like super fancy techniques or whatever. It's the simple stuff done so well that we can do it without thinking.
It is like yesterday. I like to disc golf because that's how. It doesn't matter. Like if I'm chasing a disc or a soccer ball or a basketball or whatever, if there's something involved, I will walk and not even think about it. If I just got to go out and walk, I hate it.
Yeah.
Even though one of my AM statements goes against that, but I just don't enjoy it. So I did 3 miles yesterday disc golfing, and this guy, you and he would be best friends. He played through us twice.
Yeah.
And I made a joke with him. I was like, dude, are you power disking? And he goes, what's that? And I go, what you're doing? He was running the whole time. He would run, pick up his disc, throw, full sprint, run like a gazelle, like gorgeous form. Just.
Yeah.
So he played, 18 holes twice because he played through us, just running the whole time, played through everybody probably. And, but then there was this other guy who was a little bit slower, but he could throw like crazy. And I'm not good. And so I asked for a couple tips from this other guy who played through us. And one of the things he said was, after he showed me, some of his basic form stuff, which I know from watching YouTube videos and throwing some, he's like, you don't do this enough. Like you need to be able to you need to be able to throw out of muscle habit as opposed to thinking about it.
Right.
Like anyone will tell you, yeah, shoot 1,000 times for your free throws, but it's accurate. And as I was thinking about it last night, I can think through all I want, and there's power in imagination. What I need to do is I need to throw 1,000 more times to learn how to keep my disc low, how to bend it left and bend it right, because I need to know how it feels and see what happens over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's mastery, as opposed to periodic, like you're saying. Anyways, we can cut that whole thing out. People don't need to know I suck at disc golf or that I even enjoy it.
I'll leave it up to you.
That's a powerful point, man. Anything else that you want to add before we wrap up?
I mean, the biggest thing is real change is totally possible. It just takes some intentionality. It takes some actual, like, serious self-reflection and establishing a clear direction that you want to go. And that requires you to not distract yourself intentionally with, your phone or YouTube or Netflix or whatever. It's like, no, just take some time, like real time, and establish an intentional direction for yourself, and now start living into that direction,
Yeah, I think we talked about it in the beginning, the people who have massive amounts of success, but in one or two areas, they don't see themselves as the person who can achieve this thing.
Right.
It's an identity thing, but also it's almost like that particular part of them is like everybody else. You know what I mean? I don't work with many people anymore, who are just starting out on their growth stages in life. It's usually people who are high achievers, who've already done a bunch of stuff that looks really impressive, because it is really impressive, but they are wanting to adjust, in some areas, but it's all of a sudden they forget like how it works. It still all works the same. So your skill level is not as efficient in this one particular area of your life. That's cool.
Right.
Adjust your identity, find your purpose. Who do you want to become? And then, you just reverse engineer that. These are the steps I need to take tomorrow. And when you take that first step tomorrow, all of a sudden you feel like, oh, I am becoming this person. I'm actually, because I planned the whole thing out, I can see I've already taken, all I have to do is take all the other steps and I'll get there. And when something, if you don't believe you can do something, you're not going to take the steps to make it happen. If you believe you can do something, then you'll just start taking those steps almost compulsively.
Right.
All right, brother.
Cool, man.
I'm going to make a steak for lunch. Pretty stoked about it. Yeah. Just fat filet mignon. I mean, there's no fat on filet mignon, but you know what I mean.
Like fat, as in thick.
As in thick. You made that sound dirty, dude. Stop.
You're welcome.
All right, bro. I'll chat with you later.
All right, buddy. We'll see ya.